Hello, this video is for Stat 360 handout number 13, Part B, and will include a discussion of pages 16 through 23. Okay, let's get started. The data set that we're going to use for Part B is again going to be the Minnesota Marriage Amendment Additional Predictors dataset. Part B is going to include a discussion about automating the process of doing the model building procedure. From Part A, we learned that many of the predictors should be excluded due to multicollinearity concerns. Again, to invoke the model selection procedures, we need to select personality stepwise when we're fitting the model inside of JUMP. When we get to the stepwise regression control window, we're going to want to select the Go button. This will automate the process. In the previous handout, Part A, we were selecting the Step button, which allowed me to do the model building process step by step. But that process can be automated by selecting the Go button. What I have included in this handout is the model output, not the model output, but the model building process output using both the forward and backward direction for each of the stopping rules. So here we see the information for minimum BIC. On page 19, I'm using the minimum AIC. And then on page 20 here, I'm using the p-value threshold. On the p-value threshold, I decided to bring down those liberal values for probability to enter and also the probability to leave. So JUMP has these set somewhat higher, but I brought those down to 0.1 and 0.05 respectively. The p-value threshold also allows for a mixed direction, and I included that on page 21. Okay, let me go over into JUMP and show you how to do that, those different processes. So here I have my fit model with the predictors that I want to include in my initial model. Some of those are not included because of multicollinearity, as I said. I want to select stepwise from the personality and then click Run. And here I get my stepwise control window. So I can select, or what is the default setting here is minimum BIC with forward. We're going to want to select or have no terms in the initial model. So what we did before was just step through the different steps of that forward selection. Okay. Here I'm just going to select Go, and that's going to go through and do all of the fitting of those models automatically. So there, let me do it one more time. Click Go here, and it'll automate that process. For minimum BIC forward, I've identified Republican, per capita income, bachelor, unemployed, age 0 to 17, age 65 and older, and race other as being important. Like I mentioned before, if I select the backward process, could end up with different values. When I select backwards, I want to make sure and enter all of the predictors to begin with. So the initial model for backward selection is a model that includes all of the predictors. If I click Go again, it's going to systematically remove the predictors that are not needed. The step history includes all of the different models that have been fit. If you want to remove or clean up your step history, from the drop-down menu, you can just say Clear History. So let's run minimum backwards one more time. I want to start with all of the predictors in there and then just automate to get rid of those that I don't need. I can select Plot Criterion History here. Okay, so I'll show you that. And this is the plot that we get in Jump here. And what this shows you is how the AIC and the BIC have been decreased as the number of predictors increased. Okay, and likewise, if I had a whole bunch of predictors in my model, it's going to decrease as I move backwards here. So I've provided a discussion of this plot in your handout. It's the last page here on page 23. Again, I get that plot by selecting Plot Criterion History from the red drop-down menu. Now the model building process is going to identify the model that has the smallest BIC. But I can see that a model that has 5, 6, or 7 parameters also has a fairly small value for BIC and for AIC. So we might be able to use a model with, say, 6 predictors or 6 parameters in it, or maybe even 5 parameters in it, because that has a fairly small AIC and BIC, and they have, 3 or 4 less predictors, or parameters, excuse me, than was specified by the minimum BIC criteria. So in practice, we're oftentimes interested in where this bend occurs, because that means I have a fairly good BIC and AIC value, but I have the least amount of predictors. Remember, the goal is to keep our models as parsimonious as possible. So we want to slide back on this number of parameter scale as much as we can, but still get a good model. Finding this bend is sometimes called the elbow method in determining where an appropriate AIC or BIC value should be at. Okay, on page 22, let's just go back up here quickly. This is just a comparison of the minimum BIC, the AIC, and the p-value threshold, and what predictors were important. So an X just means that predictor was included. Certainly there's some patterns that we see here. We can see that percent Republican, per capita income, percent bachelor or higher, percent unemployment, percent age 0 to 17, and percent age 65 and older are significant in predicting percent yes. Those appeared in all of the models from the various model selection procedures. There are some discrepancies here. You can see that percent race American Indian was included in each of the backward selections, but not in the forward selections. In the forward selection process, percent other was included. So again, you're not going to get exactly the same outcomes from these different model building procedures. And that's okay. There's an art to identifying the best model. It's not all just cut and dry or straightforward. Sometimes you have to make some decisions about whether or not certain predictors should be in the model, especially under the umbrella that we want to keep the model simple. Okay, that does it then for handout number 13, Part B, Automating the Process of Model Building. Thank you.